Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome to Lunch and Learn today. My name is Jeremy. I'll be leading our call today and doing my best to help you in whatever ways you can. I see quite a few people have been joining already today, and we only just started. So if you have questions, please post them in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to take a closer look at them and see what we can do. For now, let me go over some of the usual things. A lot of things to check out. Check out our YouTube channel if you're curious about anything, any interesting topics, anything like that. We post videos up there every now and then and trying to find some unique topics to discuss. Or if you have suggestions for what we could put on there, if there's something that you're interested in learning more about that we don't have on our YouTube channel, we're always happy to take suggestions for ideas for what things to add and stuff like that. Um, if you want to check out our solutions marketplace, marketplace.decisions.com. It's where we have a lot of really cool applications and extra little things, some really pretty neat things to take a look at. And if you're curious about, little applications or things that you can either build and use right away, or if you're curious about anything or like any inspiration for things like that, there's some pretty cool things in there. And then our events. So we've been kind of bringing up the roadmap review. So it's a bi-weekly sessions webinar for asking questions and just kind of learning a little bit more about what's coming up in decisions. There's also a couple other webinars that are coming up in the near future as well. So if you're interested in either of those, one of them is this week. There's the AI agents at work. I believe that one's this week. Yeah, it's on the 26th. So that's the end of this week. So if you're interested in that one, you can register here. And then there's another one in July, near the end of the July, where Foster's is going to show how they utilize decisions and a couple of really cool things. So if you're curious or interested in any of those, decisions.com/events, you can go ahead and register to any of those events to learn more. Okay. Well, with that in mind, we can go ahead and start answering questions. So far, I got one question in the Q&A, so I will start with that. If you have anything else, anyone else, feel free to type one up, and I can get to it after I'm done with this question. All right, our first question is from Helmet, and the question is, I have a process that opens a task. Before that task has been actioned by the responsible party, we want to give the submitter the option to cancel the process. What is the best way to responsibly close the assignment task before it is actioned? Okay, yeah. Go ahead if you have anything to add.
Um, no, I mean, pretty straightforward. I just need to be able to manually close these assignments, via user action, basically.
Mhm.
So I know how to like get the assignment, that's associated with the process folder. And like I've been shown there are a couple fields that you want to toggle in the assignment data structure, but I just wanted to get to see how you would approach it and how it might be done best.
Yeah, sure. So, thing that sticks out to me would be probably one of our there's probably some internal steps for closing it. Um, if you're looking for like internal, like if we're talking
No,
like,
that's
right,
it.
you
That's even better because I think normally what we would do is I think there's like three fields that are like is assigned, is active, and maybe a third one that we normally just toggle. But if there's an internal service, then yeah, I definitely prefer to use that.
yeah, if this will load for me, I will pull it up. There we go. Integration, internal services, call internal decision service. I forget, are you on version 8 or 9?
We're on version 8, but I think
Okay. The
we
only
have 8
difference there is when you hit the drop down for internal services, you'll see all the services in
instead of
here
one big parent
instead of
step.
one step. But the service names and the methods are going to be the same. So service name is where I'd find you want your assignment, and then your methods. Um, Here's where you'll find different things. So there's like literally just a complete assignment. So as long as you get the ID, you can just mark the assignment as complete. And then, if there's other things that happen, like and stuff like that for it, you could send these to change states or trigger other things, whatever afterwards. But like from this, you can just simply, have that come from, wherever they're completing their action. If there maybe the assignment's in that folder or something, when they right click it, you can just make sure that that ID goes right into the assignment ID, and then this
Hmm.
will just mark the assignment as complete. Um,
Perfect. So
and
it
then
won't it
you can
won't
add your own
necessarily
data
like
there.
cancel it or anything, but it'll just complete it and
Yeah,
yeah.
it'll mark it as if like another user came in and like the manager or whatever who had normally would have access to complete the assignment, it would
Hmm.
mark it as if it got completed. But
So,
then if you needed to change data or do something here, obviously you can, add your own elements to like if you wanted to like notify or mark it as something else separate
okay.
afterwards.
So yeah, I see what you're saying. Is it the whether you're intentionally doing it or doing it here, it's always just going to be completed, and then what happens on the different, outcomes is still up to you. So, okay,
Yes.
I got you. No, this is perfect. This is exactly what I'm looking for.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. That one was nice and easy, or at least nice and quick. Any other additional questions? I see quite a few people in here, so I'm not going to jump to ending lunch and lunch super early. I'm assuming we've got more things coming. Maybe give some people a chance to type something up if they have any questions. I guess while I'm waiting, I can just highlight a couple things for. I was actually going to be working on a video of this for our YouTube channel, so I can highlight a little bit about um, log stuff if anyone's curious until we get some questions. Actually, never mind. We got a question already. So let's go ahead and jump back to this, and then we can come back afterwards if we need to. Manal has a question, um, and I'll let you talk so you can add more. But is there a way to add special characters to a number box? For example, if I want a user to type plus 55.0 or something. Uh, Somewhat. There are some elements of that. I don't know how much of it we can have other than using like JavaScript or CSS or different things. Um, so I know there are some levels of being able to add certain things. I don't know about. Do you mean more like they can have more multiple options to show like a plus or a minus or something like that?
Yeah, just pretty much they can add like, for example, rather than just typing 8, if they can add plus 8.00 because it's a coordinates. So they usually have, but they cannot have a regular text box. It can be only a number box, but can have like minus or plus sign in the front.
Mm.
Yeah, because whenever I do either decimal, integer, or double, anytime I add the corrector, like plus, it will just only make the number, which makes sense because it's just a number box. But I
Right.
was wondering if there's any way we can have plus or negative in the front without making it a text box.
Going to say I don't think so. Not without messing around with other things. I don't know for sure if like how easy, I'm not as familiar with like CSS or other JavaScript things, how easy that would be to make the changes there. That might be a better option, I guess. But natively through here, it's just simply the numbers. I don't think you can even do negatives. Um, Obviously you've been testing that, so I think that's probably going to be made pretty clear. But I don't even think negatives affect anything. I'm not sure why that would be the case if you can technically have integers, but I don't think it works like that. I mean, I guess the 8 works. A negative would stay there. Um, Minuses work. Pluses, I think, would just not change anything because as far as it's concerned, it's just an integer. Um, so like +8 versus 8 is just the same thing as a +8. So you could utilize the negative aspect of it because a negative it would persist and like track that value as negative. The plus it wouldn't show the plus. That you would have to do by like adding it after the fact, like if you want your data to appear with a plus sign actually being included, you'd probably have to like, you know, maybe even make it a string and just have it like visually appear as a string that has the plus there. But functionally, a nothing in front of it is the same as plus, and a minus in front of it would be the minus. But I think that's all you can actually just do with the number boxes.
Got it. And then the other way would be making it a string, but having a validation where they just be able to add numbers, right? Because I was thinking about that too. Or do you think that's not a good idea?
Yeah, I think it would start to get a little complex,
Hmm.
and it would be a little bit difficult if I don't know if how the rest of your process would work, but if you need it to be a number to do something later, um, then you'd have to be a little careful with that because the plus or the minus might throw it off in the way that it tries to read a string as a number. So you'd have to probably strip that character and do something. If you need like the data type in decisions, I mean, to be like an integer or something. The the minus might be okay, but the plus might, I've never tested it, but the plus might throw off a conversion of trying to convert a string to an integer. I don't know how that would work explicitly. So that might be something you'd have to consider or at least like think about a little bit. But otherwise, yeah, you could have you can have them be allowed to type in the text box with anything. But if they type in a letter character or something like that, then yeah, you would want to throw an error. And there are definitely plenty of rules that you can do that with.
Hmm.
Because there are like if you've looked at the um if you look at like the rules, there are like character is character numeric or letter. So you could do like character letter stuff. But even then, you'd have to look at every position because these are expecting like a specific position to check. It's obviously not
Got it.
checking all of them. Oh, actually, never mind. There's characters. So there's multiple characters. So you can check like all the positions to check if all of those characters are letters. And if any of the characters are letters, obviously you throw your validation and say to only include plus minus or a number. Um, you could use symbols, but even then you'd also have to, I think this would get increasingly more complex because you would probably
Hmm.
also have to account for any symbols that are not plus or minus. And that might be also become way more difficult to consider. So yeah, that's something you have to take note of. Um, Vitali did add, I can let you speak if you want to add more of Vitali, but he did say you can probably mask it with rejects if you want to.
Mask it with rejects. That means on the text field?
Yeah, you can use like not a text box, but mask text.
Oh,
And
okay, okay. Hmm.
I do believe there is an option for regex.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Okay, that makes sense. I'll try both ways and see which one works the best. I do have one more question. Do you have some time or should I just wait?
So far, I have no other questions, so
Okay, this
it is
might
all
be
you.
a really simple question, but you know how like when you get accounts information from anywhere, so for example, you put in a name from a drop down and then the email address populates. Usually they work, how do you say it? There are two drop downs. Let me explain it. Is there any way to auto-populate a drop down and also allow the user to search it from the drop down? So for example, if you type Chris from the drop down, Chris Salas, then the other drop down populates with his email. But if I want, as a user, I can go ahead and clear that out and select another email address. Because so far, what I have learned, what's happening with me in this decisions part is I can populate the text field automatically, but not auto-populate the drop down and also allow the user to change the selection.
So you're okay. So you're saying you have two drop downs,
Hmm.
right? You pick an option on the first drop down, and then that automatically selects the option in the second drop down.
Auto-populates the second one, yes.
Yes, but not the choices that the second drop down has. Just auto populates what the selected option is in the second drop down, and you want someone to be able to still change it.
Yes. Hmm.
Got it. That should be doable. I can probably make a quick version of this. So we have two drop downs. And when you're talking about populating the second drop down, you're not referring to populating the options, right? The options are still like static or coming from something. That doesn't change based on the drop down, right?
So for example, we have a corporate directory object that takes in the requester ID and then it populates the first one, the drop down. And then from that one, whatever they select, for example, if they select Chris, then Chris's email would auto-populate on the second drop down. But if I want, I can change it to Emma's email.
Got it. Okay.
Mhm.
So if this was, let me just make like a pretend. We got Chris, we got Emma, whatever. Like four people in here, and then this drop down is coming from something that has their emails in it.
Yes. But of course, I'm using a data flow to get them populated from
Right.
corporate directory, but either or.
Yeah. What was it? I already forgot the names that I chose. Yeah, so yeah, I'll just use static just to demonstrate that I have them. But like, so with the, I know we get a lot of questions about saying like, if I choose Chris, then the drop downs options change depending on this. But in this case, all of the initial options are the same. It's just who I have like actually selected that you care about. That changes. That's what matters, right?
Yes. So for example, as soon as you type in Chris on the first one, the populating dropdown, the Chris email will auto-populate on the second one. But you can change it to Bob's if you want.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Got it. So we would want some kind of set control or something to be able to set the control value based on the first one with the one in the second one. Um, I'm just I'm going to make this just quick to show how it should work. Um, data, on data, second drop down. And then I want this to be constant. Okay, we're going to base this off of someone picking that first drop down name. That so I don't keep some errors. Okay, so we got something here. You type in or whatever, you select Chris, and then you want it to populate, and then you want to be able to say, let me change this. Is that the functionality you're looking for, what I just showed?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
It shouldn't be that difficult then with the way that you would set it up. So this is it's just a simple active form flow that's going to basically read the value that got placed in the populate dropdown, and then
Mhm.
use a select or use a and then just use the set control value to set it, because as long as we're not constantly running this active form flow, we're only running it based off of someone making a selection in that first field,
Mhm.
then it shouldn't like always change as long as you're not changing that first field. Um, so your trigger is going to be choosing a value in this first drop down, and that can happen by drop down and finding it, typing it in, and selecting it. As you saw, I typed in Chris and it just found the first one that fit automatically anyway. So that just populates with that name automatically. Then from here, your active form flow would just be probably some like truth table or something, or maybe like a fetch or something like that with fetch
Mm.
criteria to read whatever someone took from that first drop down, check and compare and make sure that the email that's associated with them matches the email in the second drop down, and then just set the control value of the second drop down with the correct, like the corresponding email. But it shouldn't prevent, like just doing it simply like this should
Mhm.
place that email in the second drop down, but shouldn't prevent you from being able to go to that drop down and finding a new one. As long as you're not making a change, because the only trigger for this is making a change in this first drop down. So as long as you don't make any changes in the first dropdown, you should still be able to freely change the second dropdown, even
Gotcha.
after you've populated it.
One thing is that I do have like multiple inputs. So for example, I know it's kind of confusing. Like I have 6 drop downs. And for example, the 6th drop down is dependent on the last 5 drop downs that I put it in. Would that make it different?
Um, it
So
shouldn't. It shouldn't. Your active form flow would then just be reading the inputs of the 5 dropdowns, correct?
yes. So for example, it would be the Chris name, Chris email, Chris date of birth, Chris city, and then it would be like, okay, the last one would be what state is he in?
Right. And as
Which
long as they've completed all 5 of those other drop downs, then the 6th
yes.
one can populate. Yeah,
Yes.
it shouldn't change anything. You could still have the same thing. You would just that trigger would be each of those 5 drop downs would be the trigger. So instead of just being the one populate drop down, like you would have a couple other drop downs in here, right? And let me just, we'll just put 3 for now. But like you'll have 3 different drop downs that all get their values and everything. And so your active form flow would be just also running from changes on each of those. And then if it's not done, like you'd have to probably assess and make sure it doesn't throw an error if you like don't have all the data that you need to populate the 6th one. But that way, if they complete it in any order, it doesn't matter. But then you could easily just do that same thing. Grab each of the items from each of the drop downs, throw it into some fetch criteria, fetch thing to make sure that you're fetching the correct item, and then have that one single item that it finds populate your set control value. It shouldn't change the functionality here. It's mostly just having more drop downs affects the rule that you're building in the beginning because it just makes it maybe a little bit more complex to that how many things you have to add to get the data there. But none of that would change. It's just, here's one step to get the data from drop down 1, another to
Mm-hmm.
get the data from drop down 2, another to get the data from drop down 3, and then maybe those are going into like your fetch or something to fetch all of your accounts with that like 5 different pieces of fetch criteria.
Gotcha, because I don't need 5 set control values. So if I have 5 inputs that require for me to populate the 6th one, I would just do the fetch entity on those 5 fetch criterias, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. This would be your field 1, like
Mm-hmm.
whatever your field 1 is getting that data. That's fetch criteria 1, and then you have another field, whatever that data is, which changes so it's slightly different. That's criteria 2. That's your second drop down. And then that will add inputs for each of those. Those inputs are getting changed. But since you're only trying to output on one box with the final result, then you only need one set control value. And that's to place your value into the final text box or final drop down box at the end.
Gotcha. And I will trigger all the 5 ones because that's my input for all of them.
Correct.
Got it. That helps a lot. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Quick question. Can I get
Yeah,
the
sure.
video of this? Like, when do you guys gonna post the video? I know you guys posted around like 3 p.m.
Yeah, it'll probably somewhere around there. If depending on how much longer we go, there's a chance that if it uploads quickly, I can get it up a little faster too. But usually it just depends on how long it takes Zoom to finish rendering the file, and then I gotta download it and put it on YouTube and everything. But
Gotcha.
most likely, yeah, it should be up by around 3 or so today.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. All right. So far, that's all the questions we've received. Any last chance for people to type up some questions? I'll give it like another minute or so. Otherwise, we can end a little early today. All right. Okay, we do have one more question, so we'll talk about that. Hello, I need to split my API call up and I need to pass the split APIs at the same time. Alexander, go ahead and expand a little bit if you don't mind. You should have the ability to speak. Yep, you're good, no worries.
Hey, sorry about that.
Nope, you're fine.
So yeah, basically we have an API call that takes a very long time to run.
Hmm.
Uh, so I want to split it up and then basically send it at the same time, if that's possible. I was thinking maybe split it up into four and then send the calls at the exact same time. So that way, you can cut it down by a magnitude of four, presumably, right?
Hmm. Yeah, there's some ways you can do some of that stuff. The splitting up, I think that just kind of like the actual splitting itself that you're talking about, that'll just come from your APIs, working on, whatever that is, depending on the thing that you're trying to
Oh, I
connect
mean,
with.
it's a list, right? So it's a list of products and we're trying to get the price, right? So we pass the product, the items, and the amount. And
Hmm.
so when we pass that through, it gives us a actual price. Now, what I need is just I can split that up and then send, let's presumably four. I think that's what they signed up for, four at the same time, and I can just come kind of combine them back later, right?
Got it. Okay. Yeah, so you're more just trying to get the data to run and to maybe hopefully move a little bit quicker on reaching out, like getting the exact data that you want
Yeah,
from your
exactly.
list.
Because it starts to it gets into like the 20-minute like wait times, right? Once I get to around 200 lines or so.
Hmm. So one option we have is the run flows for list step. Um, that's a flow. That's not the run flows for list step. No, never mind. I'm getting confused because the changes. This is the right step. Sorry,
Like
run
I know
flows
we
for
have
lists.
threading as well. Would I use threading in this
Yep.
scenario?
Yeah, so run flows for lists is actually a great step that helps us, that like sets it up to do that exactly for us. So it's a step that's kind of like a for each that takes in a list, and then it's going to run each item. It has like a built-in flow that you build inside it. So you can see now that I've dragged it up here, I have an edit up here. So when I go into this, it'll be a flow that I can build. So inside your flow here will be where you have like your actual like API call itself. And then what you can do is you can pass in a list of inputs. The inputs can be of any type. And then you can also, if you need it to output the data, you can also output any type. And so, if I have a list of strings or whatever that's going into this, I just simply pass in that list. And then inside the flow itself, that data will come in as like each individual element, like one at a time from the list that you pass in, right? So like you said, you have your um, like a list of like four items or whatever, then this I would be able to grab from that and I'd have this input item inside the flow that's going to be each item from that list. So I put in a list of four things. It's going to do item one, item two, item three, item four as this input. So then that input can be whatever it is that's important for your API call. Your API call can go in here and that input can get passed through. It can run it. If you need to output data, you can output data. Uh, so if I go back here, right, you can choose the output type as well. So if you have your own data type that this is going to come through, I know a lot of pretty commonly you have your API is going to output like a JSON or some format. You can create your data type that matches it if you need to, so you can have it output that specific data type as well. So if I just pretend that this, I actually do have some random JSON in here that I was testing at some point. But so you could have it output that specific data type as well if you needed to. So then it goes in, it runs your API call, it comes out, and then there's a run behavior on the run flows for list step. And the run behavior has different options. Synchronous is basically it's going to run the same as if you just did a for each step in here to do each item in your list. But if you want to spread it apart, you can do thread jobs or like async and wait are a couple different options. Um, if you do thread jobs, then you will not get to use outputs. It'll throw them all into different threads. You can choose how many threads you want. So if you're trying to run four simultaneously, you would want four threads. To try to run that, you can change the queue name as well if you want to track it a little bit better. If you do thread job, you will not get an output because it runs it completely asynchronously. So all the data that you're going to get back, you're not going to actually get any specific data back. It's just going to run it asynchronously and then complete those things. If you do need data back, which I'm assuming you do based on what you said, async and wait is the best option. It'll still let you run everything on
So
the
I'm
threads
sorry.
so you can run these things
Did you
simultaneously.
To confirm, you said I don't get an output from this, like any kind of output?
If you use thread jobs, like thread job and thread job async, and those options don't have outputs. Async and wait is an exception. This allows you to run it on 4 threads, but it will output the data because it'll wait for all 4 of them to get completed. And once everything is completed, then this step will finish and output all of the data from each of your items.
Got
And
it. Then I want
what you're
async.
explaining to me, yeah, what you're explaining to me sounds like
Mhm.
you want async and wait. Um, so you would just set this up, pass in your list of whatever your list is coming in as. Inside your flows where you'd have your API call, maybe any other extra stuff you want to do. You need to like build up your list or do something with it. And then you'll output your single item. So because again, it's a for each, so it's one at a time. So you'll output your single item. And then by the end, your final output will be a list of all of those things from each of the times that it ran.
Oh, so I can combine it back into a list?
Yep, it automatically
So,
it takes in the list, runs them
Mhm.
all individually, and then outputs the output list of all of those things automatically
Wait,
for you.
the part I don't understand is how does it know how many to split the list? Like, does it just look at the list and say, oh, thread count 4, so split it into 4?
Yes, so it'll take in if your list has 100 items in it, it'll take all it'll try to do all those items. The thread count is how you decide how many it can do simultaneously. So if you do 4, then it'll throw them into like 4 different sections and it'll do 4 at a time until that entire list is completed,
Wait, what do you mean
essentially.
by 4 at a time?
So let me
Maybe
do
I'm
this.
misunderstanding a little bit what's
Oh, you're
happening.
fine. I can show you. I'm just gonna do a little pause flow step in here so I can like give it a couple seconds so I can show you. I'm gonna compute constant 10 seconds. Actually don't. I'm not gonna use this for the output. Okay. So if I do this, it's gonna pause the flow for like 10 seconds and wait. And then if I take my list, it's just like a list of numbers. So if I have a list of exactly 4 things, it'll just run each of them separately. If I have more than 4 things in my initial input list, it'll run 4 simultaneously, and I'll show you that in a second here.
Jeremy, in this case, if you run that in this way, can you output number? So I do suspect that they will not be in the exact order. So you'll need to track that because if you input like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and output those numbers, they will not be in the same order
Yes,
because they are
that is
running,
very true.
yeah. So you
Yeah,
need to be able to track them from the API output.
That's okay. I don't need the order is I don't need the order, but that's good to know.
yeah.
For future state. This one because it's just I need to get the price back. The list of items doesn't, make a difference for us. At least it shouldn't, I believe. Um, so you're saying that
Sure.
it takes when you
Yeah.
put it on thread 4, it looks for 4 individual items in that list and runs them.
Yes. So if I go to
Mhm.
my event viewer and my thread jobs page, this will show you all of the like currently running threads or threads that are expecting to run in decisions, and they're set up in queues. And so what this does, these are just the default ones because I haven't run it yet. These are all like your default queues of things that are expected to run or scheduled jobs and things that you have going in your system. So I don't have anything in here, but the name of the run flows for list default was batch queue, which so you should see that appear in here once I run this. So if I go back in, I'll go back into that flow, run the flow that I have the step in, run it.
And also, Alexander, that count cannot be more than your actual threads on the server. So for example, if you have a couple cores and 2 threads and you mention 4 threads, it will run on 2 threads. So you can, for the thread count, you can input 100, but it will not run on 100 threads. It will run on the actual server threads.
So I have one more piece of that. So instead of wouldn't it be faster instead of sending each individual item, each for an API call, could I just send the list through and, you know, say, hey, this list of items, I want you to do a call for this one. And then, yeah, at the same time, split whatever my list is into four, essentially, right? Is what I'm looking to do. And then pass those lists as each as one API call.
Ye- Say that. Sorry. Say that one more time.
So it seems like this would, if I had 800 items, then it would make four calls at a time, right? It'll make four API calls at a time and then just kind of keep going. Is that
Mhm.
faster than just sending through the list at the same time, like splitting the list into four and then passing it through?
So you just mean like having one that's 200 items, another that's 200 items, another that's 200 items. Like that's what you
Yes.
mean?
Yeah, basically, like if I get a list of 100 items, I know 100 items is going to take 20 minutes, but I want to cut that down. So I want to split it into four lists of 25, right? And then
Got it.
pass that at the same time to my API call.
I see. Okay, there's some other ways you could do that as well. I don't know how often um or maybe how I guess maybe optimal this is. But there are like branch steps you can use. And so like the branch it's a branch and merge step. Um, and what this does is it creates different paths that try to like run things. It's the closest we have to like running like a parallel like process, running things multiple times. So you can have it have like different pathways. And so if you have your like four separate calls, you break your list apart into four. Um, you can have it run like this. And then from there, you can just have each of these be your API calls that you're trying to run. Um, to like get completed. Well, not actually there. There's a merge step that brings it back together so that it won't continue onto the next like part of the process until each of these things is done. So it'd be something like this. This may fit your use case maybe a little bit better because the idea
No.
is it'll split into your each of your individual calls, and then this is how you're like 25 items, 25 items, 25 items, 25 items. So then you can that would try to run it as well, and then it won't, since you have the merge here, it won't go on to the next steps until all of these are completed. But then they'll at least be split up so they're not just trying to run 100 at once. It's the groups of 25 like you mentioned, but then it'll go on after that.
Jeremy, in this case, how would you branch that? So if you have like 100, how would you branch it?
I don't know. That's the one thing I'm not 100% sure on the best way to do that, I guess. You'd have to like, I guess, separate your data into four groups first, into your like separate lists,
Hmm.
then branch it apart and pass each of your lists of 25 into the API call that you're trying to do here. Um, I guess that's maybe the best way to do it.
Alexander, in this case, do you have a control over the API that you're trying to call?
I have no control over the API.
It takes in
None.
a list of things.
Yeah, it takes in a list. It takes in a list of objects, yes. I mean, I saw that the actual subflow itself has an options for async and wait. Subflows have that. I was just curious on how to like pass it through correctly. Like I
You're
wanted to
talking
make sure I'm
about,
using it right.
are you talking about this option?
Yeah, right there where you pick run flow, async
Yeah,
and
sorry,
wait.
this one.
Yeah. And I was
Um,
thinking, could I just pass it through there, like, and have that run? Because every time it'll run, it'll do it again, right?
No, not quite. So running
Okay.
a flow async and wait like this, um, it's this can be used. This is more like to allow the like to allow these API calls to be run asynchronously and outside of like this flow itself, so that the flow is not like getting stuck or waiting. So you can have them run like similar to what I was just talking about with the run flows for list step, where they would run on separate threads as opposed to just like in this flow. So you could do like um the same thing that I have here, but each of these would be your subflows, and the subflows could be async and wait if you want them to run asynchronously. To like run on threads in the back end and stuff while it's running. But you'd still need some kind of branch like thing to do it separately. It's not going to uh, like necessarily do like the run flows for list does like a for each kind of way to run the process. This doesn't do that. This just essentially allows the whatever this flow is completing to run asynchronously, so that the rest of your flow can do other things if needed. Um, so, I mean, I have seen examples. It sounds pretty similar. I have seen examples where people have done exactly this, where they have a branch that goes into four or more different like async and wait subflows like this, with that setting changed um, in here to run it like that. Um, so I have seen that before, but it would still have the same thing where it has the branch to branch into the subflow, and then there's four
So
of those subflows there.
if I use the branching step here, I can make 4 paths and then, like you said, pass my API subflow and set it to async and wait and on all four, and then that should work, right?
Yes.
All at the
Alexander,
same time?
yeah, I would say your choice would be option number one, run flows for release. But the question is, did you measure for that API call if it makes a difference when you make one call with 100 in list and make 100 calls?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, because the issue is that we only have a certain amount of calls we can make at one time, and I don't want a big order of 100 to come through and just kind of lock up all of our available, you know, space. Or
So your option would be number one, run flows for list. And that would depend on your server. If you
Mhm.
have a like a strong server, for example, if you have 16 threads, you will be able to make 16 calls at a time.
Okay, so you're saying that I should just use the run flows for list, set thread to 4, and that should be fine.
Yeah, if you're able
If
to do
that's
four
allowed,
calls at the
yeah.
same time. Yeah.
Okay, and then I guess it does all the other work that I want anyway, right? Where it goes through the entire list and then joins it back in together. So,
Yeah. And yeah, all of that stuff you
mhm.
would have to do manually, especially if you did it this way. Like you'd
Yes.
have to break the list apart first, send
Mhm.
each of those individual list items into here, and then put all of them together afterwards. That gets done automatically for you with the run flows for lists. The fact
Mhm.
that it runs on four threads does that part automatically for you, so it'll only be doing four calls at a time, and then it won't do like the next call until one of those is done. Like it throws them all in a queue and says like, okay, there's four queues happening at the same time. And then, items 1 through 25 in the first queue, it's going to do item one. When item one is done, then it's going to do item two. So like it'll wait. It's not going to try to like throw, 10 API calls to your service
Oh,
at the same time.
Jeremy, it's
Okay.
not exactly like that. So if you have 4 threads on the server, you run 4 at a time. Then when first one is completed, then fifth one will get on. So it's not like 4, 4, 4, 4.
Yeah.
It's like when you open up a thread, it will run another one.
Got it. So it's like a queue, like we said, right?
Yes,
It's a queue, and it'll consistently have 4 going at a time.
yes.
My only worry about that is the time to actually just, from the time that we open this API up, right, and then close it, just that general connection time being longer than just sending a list. Because if I'm sending a list and the ports are, like say the port's already open, then I don't have to keep reopening it and closing it, right? So that was my only worry, that it might just take longer doing it this way. I'm not sure, but
The only thing that will get in the way is that if you get something going on the server, which will occupy some threads, like physical threads. Not you can, as I said, you can say 100 threads. It will try, but it will fail because it looks at the physical server where you're running it. So if you get something going on the server at the same time, it will not be 4. It will be 1, maybe 2. It will just try to occupy all open threads.
That's great. I will try it, and as long as I mean it's good, then I will try to push it through like this. And if I have any issues, maybe I'll try the merge way instead. Um, I think all of them should work in theory,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I think like Vitali's pointing out, your run flows is your best bet. I would try that first. And if you're still maybe having a little bit of trouble, try reaching out to support and just say, I'm trying to make this more efficient, and they may have a little bit like of a better suggestion before jumping to this. I do know that this works, but I also know that like from having discussions with like our CTO and stuff, even this is a very niche use case that very few people have done because things like this usually work better. Um, so I'm
Also,
sure that there's probably a better way to get that to work.
one last thing, I see now that there's also a batch processing version of this. Is this, is that worth looking into, do you think? Uh, is it much different? It seems like it just grabs, a certain amount, which
A
I don't
separate
get the
step you're
point.
talking about?
Yeah, it's called run flows for list, but batch processing. I don't get the point of having this one when the first one kind of already batches it.
I think it might just
But
be the same thing.
it feels like it might be the same
I
thing.
think it's the same step. I think it's just a slightly different name. Usually when we talk about run flows for list, we say run flows for list is a batch processing step. So I'm assuming this is just the same thing, just with different names in different locations. It looks to be exactly the same to me.
Okay,
Alexander,
perfect.
I would suggest to get with like a ops team and say, when I run this process, when you get your CPU up to some point, stand up another server to help process this. And when it's done, just get them down just to help to process.
Luckily, we are hosted by Decision, so it'll be
Okay.
running on their threads, right? So I guess I would have to get with support to make
Yeah,
sure
so
that
yeah, if you wanted to do any more like testing and further stuff with that, yeah, you can get with support and they'll definitely be able to help you and work towards that then to do
cool
exactly what
beans.
he's talking about.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Well, looks like most of the people that were here earlier have left, and we only got like 10 minutes left. So I think we can go ahead, and I've got no more questions. And for today, so thank you all for joining. Always happy to discuss. Going to be seeing a lot of me this week, since Gregory is visiting our India offices, so he's working a little bit different hours. So it'll be me most of this week, but we will have an appearance from Jared as well. So we'll see you all the rest of this week, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.